Every week it seems like I'm talking about current events, and I don't love talking about current events. Prefer to teach from the Parsha. So I do start off the week saying, maybe this week I'll get to talk about the Parsha, and the world will be quiet and uneventful, and I won't have to comment on something crazy that's going on. That's how I start off the week. Usually by about Monday, something happens, and I say, I can't let this slide, and this deserves some commentary, some review, maybe some response from the pulpit. It happened again this week. I don't think Olivia Chow is anti-Semitic. I don't. I've met her a few times. I've heard her speak before. I think she's a good-hearted, naive, kind person who sincerely believes in her ideals and wants to make the city a better place. I do think that she is ill-suited to her position, an ill-suited mayor for these difficult times. Sadly, although some in the Jewish community have tried to enlighten her, I find her ignorant of Jewish and Israeli issues, actually rather uninterested in international affairs and its complexities, and that one of those poor decisions, of course, was her decision to boycott the Israeli flag-raising ceremony this week at City Hall, and explain her rationale for doing so by expressing her opinion that the flag is divisive and, quote, causing deep pain and anguish to many in the community, end quote. She also seemed in her statement to apologize that the flag was being raised in the first place, shifting blame to the city's protocol office. For some background, since 2007, the city, in conjunction with Global Affairs Canada, has raised the flags of more than 190 nations with which Canada has diplomatic relations to mark their national days of celebration or independence. It's a bit of a strange practice, but it is rooted in Toronto's multicultural identity. As a city, we celebrate the many backgrounds and nationalities that make up the diversity of our city, and raising the different international flags is a way of displaying that value. The mayor usually does not attend these ceremonies. You can imagine with so many national days of celebration throughout the year, the mayor often has more important places to be and more important things to do. But as far as I know, and as far as I've researched, this is the first time that the mayor was invited to such an event, could have attended, but chose not to, and chose to make a statement that they're not attending out of principle. And of course, this drama and the decision was reserved for Israel, always the useful victim of a double standard, on the day when it was celebrating its 76th anniversary as a country, in the year when it was under attack by a terrorist regime, by Iran, by its proxies. I don't know about you, but I did feel that this was a tremendous insult to Israel and to this city's Jewish community. But it's important that we understand precisely why, since I believe that most of the press coverage surrounding the story missed the mark. The real story here, in my opinion, is that our enemies have run a very successful propaganda campaign against Israel. The campaign is filled with blatant lies and exaggerations, lies that have been uncovered again and again, with this week even the UN acknowledging that it should not have been reporting casualty numbers using Hamas-affiliated sources of information. They had to do a bit of a revision. The propaganda campaign seeks to portray the Israel-Hamas war as genocidal, and also seeks to portray Israel as an illegitimate state run by an apartheid regime. It also seeks to justify the October 7th terrorist attack as the desperate actions of resistance freedom fighters against an evil colonial occupation. The main tactics of the campaign have been civil disruption of many different sorts. As in many, many other cities around the world, Toronto has been the victim of mass protests on the part of the pro-Palestinian campaign, the same campus encampments that you see on the television, shutting down of speakers, shutting down airports, train stations, roadways, major avenues of transportation. The mayor's boycott had nothing to do with the divisiveness of the flag. That's what she said, but it's not true. There are many other flags that get raised in this city, and that doesn't seem to bother her. The rainbow pride flag is also divisive and offensive to some people in the city, but because it represents values that the mayor believes in, she attends. Mayor Chow did not attend the rally because the pro-Palestinian mobs and encampments have successfully bullied her against doing anything that might legitimize and affirm the Jewish state. That's why she didn't attend. For many months now, I've been wondering why the pro-Palestinian camp has been targeting her. I don't know if you've noticed, but she gets yelled at and harassed constantly by the pro-Palestinian camp. Why her? She's the mayor of a city. She has no role in international affairs. And on top of that, she's very progressive. She's even called for a ceasefire, but they still don't leave her alone. They love yelling at the mayor of Toronto. For a long time, I didn't get it, but I think I figured it out. I believe the pro-Palestinian crowd sensed that because Mayor Chow is progressive, these civil disruptions would likely work on her. Other politicians wouldn't pay these protesters any mind. Many would denounce them firmly. But this is a mayor who speaks the language of dialogue and understanding. She's been involved in civil disruptions before in the past. She's sympathetic to social justice campaigns, and she believes in freedom of expression, even recently going against the Toronto police, who asked her to speak up for civility in the city. They targeted her because they believed they would be effective on her, and they were correct. Mayor Chow did not boycott this ceremony because the flag is divisive. Nonsense. She boycotted because she caved into the demands of the mob. That's the real story here. That's the real scandal. And that's the real concern. In Jewish tradition, mob rule is a serious danger, not to be underestimated, a significant affront to God. Actually, there are many stories of outrageous mobs taking control of situations in the Torah. In a few weeks, the famous story of Korach and his mob. You might say the story of Joseph against his brothers who formed a mob against him. Maybe one of the most famous stories of mob rule is in Parashat Vayera, telling the story of the destruction of Sodom and Gomorrah. The Torah says they were destroyed, these cities, for their wickedness, but it isn't clear about what made them particularly wicked. Only as we read through the story do we realize that their sin is that it is a city run by mobs. Read it when you have the chance. A whole group of evil people surround Lot's house, and they make demands of him. Release the visitors who are visiting with you. Lot tries to negotiate with them, but mobs aren't interested in dialogue or understanding. They refuse any compromise. When mobs rule the city, there's no justice, no process, no principles. In the end, we know what happens to Sodom and Gomorrah. But I wonder, even if God had not destroyed these cities, maybe they would self-destruct anyway. Cities that give in to the demands of angry mobs get destroyed. That seems to me to be the lesson. On Yom HaAtzmaut, Prime Minister Trudeau, Premier Ford, they didn't cave. Though they come from different parties and political backgrounds, both had the decency to publicly recognize Yom HaAtzmaut and its significance to Canada's Jewish community. Mayor Sutcliffe of Ottawa attended a ceremony as well. But Mayor Chow of Toronto, home to the largest Jewish community in this country, couldn't even issue a single positive statement about Israel on its Independence Day. Only that Israel creates deep pain and anguish in the community, a statement that is in and of itself profoundly divisive, erasing seemingly the presence and significance of any Jews in this city. Other leaders, like those I mentioned, recognize that Canada has to stand by its principles even in the face of threatening protests. These principles are basic, that Canada embraces fellow democracies that believe in freedom. Israel is an ally of Canada and cooperates with many important institutions in this country on a whole number of crucial projects. These include security projects, academic ventures, medical collaborations, business and finance endeavors, and much, much more. Here in Canada, home to one of the world's largest Jewish communities, we recognize that Jewish people in this country have contributed in incalculable ways to this country's strength and success. When Canadian prime ministers visit Israel, they are honored at the highest levels of government. And when Israeli presidents and prime ministers come here, it's the same thing. Israel was also attacked just a few months ago in one of the worst terrorist atrocities in recent memory. There are basic ideals and values, beliefs and history which bind together these two countries. You would think that they would mean more than the disputes many have in the way Israel is conducting this current war, in the feelings people have about this current government. Mayor Chow didn't care. She didn't want to upset some of her friends, didn't want to instigate the anti-Israel mob, probably caved in to some pressure from her former NDP colleagues. This is a mayor who speaks frequently of inclusivity, diversity, coexistence. It's not true. If you yell at her loud enough, she'll cave. She sided with the bullies. She gave in to their intimidation tactics. She effectively re-victimized Israel and this country's Jewish community. And more than that, I don't know if she realizes it, but there are ramifications here that apply directly to the conflict itself. Hamas and Iran become emboldened when they see Israel's reputation being smeared around the world. Their vision of victory is an Israel weakened and delegitimized on the world stage, and they are winning that campaign. Some suggest that is why we have no hostage deal. They want this campaign. They want this war to keep going. It's important to listen to what people are saying. It's important to give people platforms to express themselves. But when we supplant our fundamental principles, values, and relationships because of mob demands, it only spurs on more civil disobedience, more chaos, more disruption. I worry very much for a city and a country and a world if we can't recognize this truth, and if that's what we're tolerating from our leaders. I had an appointment downtown on Tuesday afternoon, and as I was walking down Bay Street, I had an opportunity to see the Israeli flag waving at City Hall. Mayor Chow, for me as a Jew, that flag is more than a piece of cloth, more than a symbol, more than a government, more than a country. When I saw that flag flying, I felt that my city acknowledged me, as it acknowledges the nationalities, cultures, and backgrounds of the many good people who make up this city. That flag represents the national identity and aspirations of my people, the Jewish people. It serves as a symbol of unity, pride, and belonging for Jews everywhere. That Israeli flag symbolizes our historic and indigenous connection to the land of Israel. It reminds us of Jerusalem, the spiritual and cultural center of our faith. It reflects our deep-rooted connection and the desire for self-determination in our ancestral homeland. That flag embodies the values of democracy, freedom, and pluralism that are fundamental to liberal society, and it is a symbol of hope and resilience for my people who have endured centuries of persecution and adversity. It represents the triumph of faith and the human spirit over tyranny and oppression. Mayor Chow, you are the mayor of our city. You have a responsibility to represent all Torontonians, regardless of background and belief. By boycotting this event, you have shirked this responsibility and have sent a dangerous message that some voices in this city are more equal than others. You've given in to the demands of an angry mob. You have declared that it is acceptable to marginalize and exclude those with whom we disagree. You have emboldened the forces of evil, prolonged and deepened a conflict, and just encouraged more civil disruption against you, against the Jewish community, and against all citizens who, for the most part, I think, just want civility, law, and order. At this time, it may be true that our flag is divisive, but your worship, it's not nearly as hurtful and divisive as your decision to boycott it. Shabbat Shalom.